Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. I really enjoy flying helicopters in X-Plane. Its flight modeling has really matured over the last couple of years in ways that are very satisfying for home flight simulator usage. However, the lack of good scenery has been, I guess, disappointing for X-Plane 12. But now that OrbX has started to release their TrueEarth sceneries for X-Plane 12, that is a huge game changer. It's kind of a long video today. Basically going to just take you on a few flights I did around the area of TrueEarth North, or Great Britain North, in my little Bells Over Britain helicopter tour. Let's see, I did some flights out of Inverness. I did some flights out of Glasgow, Edinburgh. I did some flights out of Kirkwall in the Northern Islands. It's a very large area that the scenery package encompasses, and it looks great. Oh, before we get too far, yes, it is the Nimbus Huey. No, it has not been updated for X-Plane 12. And yeah, it does have a few issues, but it does fly pretty well in X-Plane 12. Anyways, it flies good enough not to set it aside. I'll put it that way. I only have default airports. I don't have any add-on airports. There really aren't a lot for this area right now for X-Plane 12 anyways. So all of my airports are default scenery right now, so you can get a good sense of how the OrbX photoreal scenery blends with the airport scenery as I come and go approaching different airports. Let's take the two different versions of Cow and Sim Bell 206s out today. I have both the B3 and the L3. I have the other Cow and Sim helicopters, except for the Bell 222 for X-Plane. They just don't fit and feature well into the Bells Over Britain category today. The other models I have are from Nimbus, obviously, and X-Trident for the Bell 412. it is really quite nice to see what can be done with the current scenery engine, I guess would be the best way to put it for X-Plane 12 right now. That's something that has been gone over on the X-Plane blog, developers blog, talking about updating the scenery engine, because right now it doesn't really do 3D assets well, right? So that's like a difference in scenery. I guess that's something we can talk about in flight sims. Trying to keep low poly and high performance, right? So we can't render all of the world in high detail and do an accurate physics simulation of the weather and a large body of fluid, being the air, that we're also going to fly through and interact with. It takes a lot of computation, right? Computers have come a long way, but they're still fairly limited as far as home computers anyways, and what we can do. And obviously, now that there's the simulators on consoles, it makes a big difference as well in what we can do. But X-Plane has been talking about revamping their scenery to be able to handle 3D assets, where I think the other simulator, Microsoft, handles their simulator or their 3D assets as sprites. They're not true 3D assets, anyways, at least for the vegetation. So there's not really a way to do that in X-Plane, which is why you have the two different LODs, right? The X paper trees, right? So you have an XY plane, two flat pieces, or now they've got the 3D trees that get drawn as you get closer, which are a 3D asset, which takes up resources, right? Which is a 3D asset, like the buildings are 3D assets. So it's kind of cool that, like, with the OrbX scenery, there's custom 3D assets everywhere, but that's kind of the best you're going to get with the current engine for X-Plane until they rewrite and revamp their engine. We'll see what they'll do in response to what Microsoft has done. And you have to really think that Microsoft 2020 was really a huge leap forward in what we were able to see as far as sim scenery, especially over what FSX had given us. You have to look before the new flight simulator came out back in 2020. The scenery for flight simulators had basically been a low poly mesh. 100-meter resolution was good, 50-meter resolution was better. I mean, now some areas we're doing 30 and 15 by default, which is spectacular. But that was the norm, right? We had a mesh, and then you had assets placed on top of it at different LODs as you got closer, depending on performance. Until Microsoft introduced the new sim, right? We had all kind of drooled at what Google Earth had been doing, right? What we could only wish to incorporate that with the flight sim. Well, that's essentially what Asobo did, was figure out how to lay that DEM data over the world and not have a crazy performance impact and still be able to run an aircraft simulation on top of that. So that's kind of the new technology, and we'll see how X-Plane and Laminar Research respond to that. But this technology, like what OrbX has done here with TrueEarth North for X-Plane 12, has kind of taken the previous technology as far as it'll go, I think, and it works. It's excellent. So the kind of cool thing about X-Plane is the resolutions for things as you get closer stay high quality. The buildings and all of the assets look good when you get close to them, and even look realistic. I would say more so than their counterparts. Right? The DEM and LiDAR data in Microsoft does not look good when you get close to it. So you have, with both of the simulators, you have this kind of transition that we're trying to figure out how to deal with in the simulation world, and it's kind of interesting, and we'll see which developer takes what approach. And then there's Aerofly in there in the mix too, and seeing what they'll do. Either way, right now we don't have the perfect simulation that we're dying for, right? The greatest simulation would be able to have like LiDAR data, DEM data for the whole world, and have it incorporated where the LOD works flawlessly, and then it can be replaced with high quality, believable models as you get closer, and then get into, you know, the real world where you could land a helicopter in an intersection with the same quality assets as a Call of Duty game. That would be kind of like the dream, and blending of all of the different simulation technologies. We're definitely not there yet, and it's interesting to see all the different developers are dealing with what we have now, and how the simmers are responding to it in community. I love flying X-Plane, and I'm super happy that OrbX has decided to continue supporting X-Plane, and I can't wait for all of the other TrueEarth sceneries to come out. I'm super excited for the West Coast. I would love to see the Midwest. I know it's a long shot, but my home area of flying, I would love to have that included, and see. There was a developer, I can't remember the name of the developer, but they did Custer Field in southeast Michigan, which was kind of around the time that the TrueEarth scenery came out, and done in the same way, much smaller area, but done in the same and similar way, and they modeled everything and redid the area so that it was true to life, and that was kind of groundbreaking at the time. I love flying in that area. This is the default installation anyways with TrueEarth North. I went in and I did change the configuration after I recorded all of these clips to give transparent roads, which is a neat feature that has been available in all of the TrueEarth sceneries. So it's kind of a trade-off, and what we were just talking about with especially helicopters. The transparent roads look great from a higher distance, but then you get the blurry textures when you approach them. So for helicopters, it's kind of nice to be able to fly into intersections and have those high quality road textures, but it doesn't look as realistic. So, or at least from altitude, it doesn't look as realistic, because then you have the X-Plane 12 generic roadway textures, which, I mean, like I said again, they look good from up close. They actually look realistic and they look like roadway, but from a distance they don't quite blend well. There's much more variation, and they just don't look real, right? That really makes them stick out like a sore thumb. So anyways, that option is still available, as it always has been for the TrueEarth sceneries, to do transparent roadways in the configuration options, and I plan on doing some videos in the future showcasing the transparent road textures. Speaking of one of the things and why I love flying an X-Plane, the skid flex is great on pretty much all of the helicopters from all the different developers. I don't know if it's the way that the models interact with the flight model and the ground model, but they've got it done really well, and especially in VR, you can almost feel the flex of the skids in the helicopters in X-Plane 12, and it's great. It's one of the best features, and why I love flying helicopters in X-Plane. again, you can see the Huey here. It flies well in X-Plane, if you don't mind ignoring a few things. The governor is one of the things that had changed a little bit in the flight model, so that's one of the things that needs to be updated. So it's constantly at the high end of the rotor and engine RPM arc, because the governor management is just off, and because of that the rotor RPM limit and master warning are constantly going off. But other than that, it flies pretty well in X-Plane 12. Water masking, I would say, is definitely a highlight in this package. The shorelines and coastlines, they all look amazing, and especially with the new water and depth features in X-Plane 12, it just adds to the realism. Especially a couple of the airports have some cool elevation changes, like along edges of coastal areas, especially in Inverness. It's a pretty cool approach from the north end. It looks exceptionally good in VR. I do have to change my settings, and I do that for the replay. All the external views are recorded from the replay. I fly pretty much exclusively in VR using a Varjo Aero headset these days, and I usually record the VR mirror. Not always, but I usually do. So it's too resource intensive to do anything more than that. So I do all of my external views from the replay. But it is very resource intensive to fly in VR, so I do have to turn my settings down. Basically my level of detail, rendering distance, and resolution. I have to turn all of those down for VR performance. That'd be something that'd be great for X-Plane to implement. Microsoft Flight Simulator does it, DCS does it, in a way. Flight Sim basically has a VR mode where it's either using the standard monitor or using a VR headset, and it switches automatically between the two, and you can set the graphics setting dependently. DCS doesn't really do it that way, but they do have a preset. You can save 3 different graphics presets, and it's much easier just to switch between those presets for different performance variations. So with X-Plane, you don't have a preset save option like that, or a VR mode where it saves the settings. You have to change your graphic settings every time you switch modes. I don't have a top-of-the-line system, but it's a pretty good rig. So I'm running a 12.9, an i9-12900K unlocked, slightly overclocked. I'm air cooling, so not crazy, and I'm running a 3080 Ti, so it performs decent enough with good enough settings with my Varjo Aero. With that being said, performance is great with the OrbX scenery. There's not an impact that I've noticed between this and any of my other sceneries that I have for X-Plane. I have a scenery for Talkeetna Airport from Northern Sky Studio, and I run that with a few ortho tiles that I've generated with Ortho for XP 1.3. I'm not into the new version yet. There is some work being done by the creator of that program to bring it up to standard for XP12, but I'm not really a power user. I'm not great with Python, so I haven't run any updates or done anything with that yet for the new 1.4 version, I think would be for X-Plane 12. Anyways, I've got some older. Well, I generated them for XP12, some tiles in the Talkeetna area, and I don't see any difference between the performance here, is what I'm getting at with this OrbX scenery versus generating your own ortho tiles. Well, the nice thing about this is, though, it's all done for you, and it's color corrected, and the autogen and the roadways are all laid out and hand corrected, so it's a large area of scenery that looks good, that you know is going to look good, that you don't have to mess with. For the price, it's great. You just kind of plop it in there and forget about it and go fly VFR, and it's great. It would be kind of cool to see some variation in the autogen buildings. I don't know if there's an algorithm in how it places them, or if it's using color from the ortho imagery, if there's any kind of AI involved. I'm not sure how it works. So the modeling and the colors and everything in the buildings and the type look great, and they mesh well with the scenery. There's just a lot of repetition of the same autogen building. But they're great, so they've removed the whole square tile for a house that the default scenery kind of does everywhere. That looks terrible. So, I mean, that's not even an issue there. So it's really only noticeable if you stare at it. Now that I've pointed it out, you'll notice it. But if you're not looking at it, you don't really notice. So, but here's kind of what I was talking about with the roadway textures and flying down into an intersection. So when you get close to the models and the different things in X-Plane, they look really good, actually. The assets look good, even like the cars and buses and things and houses. They're simple models, but the texturing and everything, it looks good close up. Now, the ground texturing, not so much, but the asset texturing looks good. So a nice way to cover that up would be if they had some kind of default grass. I know that there is in some areas. I'm not sure if there's a setting or if it's the scenery package or what. But yeah, some kind of just like grass texture, 3D sprite model would be cool to kind of disrupt that blurry texture. It'd be really cool to disrupt that blurry texture. I mean, the other thing that would be cool about it is it would give you, especially for helicopter pilots, it give you a better reference to the ground. Like I normally would have sat down in the roadway there, and like I said, those textures as you get closer to the roadways are really nice. The asphalt actually is believable, and one thing that is great about this simulator, like the things you don't pay attention to or notice, but the rock size or pebble size within the asphalt as you get closer to the texture is more accurate and true to life in X-Plane. It's really good actually, which is like not something you would ever think of in a flight simulator, surprisingly, but it makes a difference when you're flying helicopters because it's important for that gauge of how far you are from the ground. Yeah, you get your sight picture for aircraft, and like you generally start to understand how far you are sitting off the ground, but just that gauge on the rock texture size in the asphalt, it makes a difference on how how close you assume you are to the ground, and that matters for simulation because you only have that visual cue. And I can't get over how good the marshland and shorelines look in the scenery package. is about the perfect altitude for this scenery. It looks great flying with helicopters. So, I mean, this is pretty much cruising altitude for noise abatement, about 1,500 feet. Above ground level is pretty good for keeping the neighbors happy. Anyways, from this altitude, the scenery looks really good. It's just about perfect. I cannot wait to try it with the new configuration with the transparent roads. Really love the elevation changes in the mesh with its scenery package. It's really good coming into the airports. This one is especially nice. You still get the melted cliff textures that will plague flight sim probably for the next few generations. Hopefully we can get somewhere or some kind of technology in the future to figure that out. Really, if we can just get all of the competing flight sim manufacturers to cover the world with DEM data with LiDAR technology, we'd be good to go. And we'd have our true digital twin. It would be good for all developers to use, and they can continue to mature their flight models to their heart's desire. Really do enjoy the Nimbus Huey. Hopefully in the XP12 update, one of the things that gets attention is the rotor blade animation. It's not holding up to par here with the updated simulator. I was having some performance issues with the Coensim L3. I don't actually think that it was helicopter or simulator related. It might have had a little too much heat in the area where I was running my computer. I had some artifacts and some issues, so nothing, a little bit of cool down and some restarts didn't solve. Anyway, the cockpit recording has some stuttering in it. I don't recall having too much stuttering for the entire flight, but there were some points where I had some slowdown. But again, I don't believe that was an OrbX issue or a coastlines issue. I think that was my computer issue. There are those absolutely gorgeous coastline water mats again. They look amazing. If they rewrite their engine and X-Plane manages to figure out a way to handle ground clutter, then their scenery would look probably the best out of all the different simulators. That's really what's missing, and that's what I think would make the scenery the next step up. So we'll see, like, if they get a rewrite, how that affects products like this, or if OrbX is waiting to release their other TrueEarth products to see what changes there are in the simulator. But if X-Plane were to look at the improvements that they could make in the scenery engine, ground clutter and the height of things is probably the biggest area to improve things. And I don't know if that's something that they would be able to use AI to do, or what the next generation scenery will be like for all the different simulators. But that's really where the realism is lost, right? In the simulators. You've got these flat areas, and then all of a sudden you've got buildings and trees on these flat areas, and that's not really how the real world is, and that's where you get kind of spoiled with the photogrammetry areas, because then you really get to see what it actually looks like. I mean, up until now, the only people that really saw that were real pilots. So now people that are experiencing the photogrammetry areas in Microsoft Flight Simulator can see what it's truly like. And this is really, really close, but it doesn't quite get you the photogrammetry. So we'll have to see where the next generation of scenery engine and what type of assets and how they'll approach it. And like I said, I really hope that they address like the ground clutter. It's like bushes and shrubs and things that come in at different heights. It's like the trees look great and the 3D trees are wonderful, but there's not really enough variation in vegetation height to really give it that true to life vegetation line that you see at the edge of human habitation, right? And humans gather junk, and it'd be nice to kind of see those like elevation changes with like the junk that people gather around things. But that's a lot to ask of AI right now, to be able to read from photogrammetry or orthophotographic or satellite images. So we'll see. I think that's where the technology is headed, and you can kind of see where they've come with this and what it looks like to be hand edited versus what an algorithm can do. So both approaches I think are really good, and this has certainly brought my enjoyment of X-Plane 12 to the next level. So I'm super excited about all the next releases of OrbX TrueEarth. I really cannot wait to change those roadway textures and give it another go. I think we'll do some more X-Plane 12 videos Maybe we'll take out the Dreamfoil Schweitzer S300 CBI. It's a great add-on for X-Plane 12, and we'll go hunting for Nessie and Loch Ness. Yeah, you can see my performance issues caused me some problems here, and it actually caused my videos to get out of sync. Had a hard time lining up these internal versus external recordings to line up the landings. One of the cool things about this scenery package, though, it's like I've definitely found helicopter landing spots in all sorts of city areas. So I don't know if they added these to the airport list. I need to double check and see if these pads have actual identifiers. But I found 3 different pads to land on in 3 different areas. One near Edinburgh, one near the actual city of Inverness, Inverness, if I say it correctly. Say it like an American, trying to sound like an American, not sounding like someone who's butchering the names of things horribly, but definitely not with a Scottish accent, because I could not do it justice. Anyways, it's a great scenery package, and there's a ton of great areas, lots of landing spots for helicopters. Great job, OrbX. Thanks for watching. Be safe, be kind, and I'll see you in the next video.